God for blessing me to get this camera going like it should be going, and I am just so thankful. Have some camera problems, so I have to use another camera today, but I am so thankful that I finally got it going. Welcome to Point of View. This is Shirley. I thank you so much for being with me. Today, what I'm talking about is, and on my caption, I had it up, and for some reason I chose not to show it, but there it is. When is it time to stop giving advice, and how to politely tell someone to mind their business? And the other day we talked about the naysayers. So I'm just so glad to be here today. And I hope, like I said, I hope you're doing well. Dear God, as I sit before you to speak, I pray to you that my soul you will keep. And if I should die before I finish, I pray to you, dear God, in the name of Jesus, that any outstanding sins will be forgiven. Amen. So I'm going to go right on to what I was going to talk about today. When is it time to stop giving advice? Stop giving advice. And I have one that tells us to stop giving advice and learn how to provide uh, guidance to people. And but have you ever someone came to has ever anyone ever come to you and they talked with you and then they wanted to or called you, however they got in touch with you, and they wanted some advice and they wanted to vent to you, and then they ask you for advice, and then I'm going to go across this too today. Then, when you do give the advice, then when you hear from them again, well, I just went ahead and did what this one told me to do, and this and all. So sometimes, when do you stop giving advice? Sometimes, don't you get a little frustrated when you help people and you do the best that you can to help people? You're praying while you're talking with them, asking God to give you what to say in order to lead them in the right direction. And next thing you know, they're not taking that advice. It's going in one ear, as what is that cliche? In one ear and out the other. So, hey, sometimes we just have to go, what they say, go with the flow. Yes, we do. Go with the flow. So, when is it time to stop giving advice? And I think this is really, really, really good. But I want to say something before you give advice, and this is Harriet Lerner. And this is Psychology Today. Before you give advice, we have to be really careful about giving advice too. And I know I've said sometimes before that I'm very careful about giving advice. Most of the time, I listen if they ask, and I ask God to please, God, in the name of Jesus, give me what to say, because I don't want to say something and then they practice it, and then somehow they're harmed by what they do. And then some people can misconstrue what you say. They can go all in a different direction from what you said. So we cannot really be super responsible then, but we have to ask for guidance, and then we have to ask God to guide them too. So before you give advice, and this is like in relationships, here are most important things to know before you give advice. So what's wrong with giving advice? Sometimes nothing's wrong with giving advice. The truth is that some people love to give advice. Do you love to give advice, or are you very cautious about giving advice? But some people love, and I was just reading a study, a part of a study just a few minutes ago, and it was saying that when people give advice, it makes them feel more powerful, makes them feel more important. Important. They did some studies on that. They study and research every single thing. That's why I really like, and I study these articles that the people write, these, and I compare, because they research and everything, and then you can tell if you're basically on the right track because of several articles that you read, if they agree in many ways. All right. So the truth is that many people love to give advice, and this writer said, I even get paid, and those of us counselors, hey, yes, advice giving plays a valuable role in friendships and marriage as well. okay? In our friendships, in our marriages as well. It plays a valuable role. Advice giving, this is some serious business, okay? Now, it's a strength to be able to offer and receive advice, okay? Indeed, it's a strength to be able to offer and receive advice, but there is advice giving, then there is advice giving. So when is advice giving not helpful? And let me tell you, I came across so many good things, so many good things. It's not helpful to give advice to a person who doesn't want it, who just wants you to listen and be present. I understand that too, because I think all of us have been on both ends of that, both sides of that. It's not helpful to give advice to a person who doesn't want it, who just wants to listen and be present. Let me get to this because I need to be monitoring myself. So let me get in here and get this because I know I am live and it's going strong, and I thank God that I did finally get it to going. So, like I said, I hope you're doing very, very well today. Oh, yes. Oh, yes, there it is. All right. I really like this camera, though. If I could get it to work when I want it to work. This is my other camera. So it's not helpful to give advice to a person who doesn't want it, who just wants you to listen and be present. Next, advice giving is also of dubious value to people who want who say what they want your advice, who they say that they want your advice, but consistently fail to heed it. Now that's what I was talking about just a few, I mean, more than once a certain person has talked and talked and talked and then wanted my advice and then comes back and tell me, well, I just did this and I just did that. And so it makes you think about that. I ain't calling nobody no swine. I ain't doing that. So, okay, that's my disclaimer. But there's a scripture in the Bible that says, don't cast your pearls before the swine. All right. So, because it doesn't do any good. They're not going to eat them. They're just going to root them around and root them around in the mud and in the dust and whatever. So, that good advice is just gone in the wind, or in the mud, all bogged down, not helping, not heeded or anything. So, advice giving is also of dubious value. And the dubious, sometimes that's hesitating or doubting, dubious, hesitating or doubting. It's of dubious value. Now, what did I just do? Hi, everybody. Thank you for being with me. I'm still live, but this computer, I don't know whether you heard that lock up on me, but the computer locked up on me. And it said that my computer, as a matter of fact, it was saying my computer is being held hostage. So I am going to go back and see what's happening here on the computer. But I am on the phone now, and I have not turned the camera on because I will have to hold it. But there I am, there I am, there I am. Thank you so much for your patience. And I do apologize for that, but it's nothing I could do to stop it. It just grabbed a hold of my computer and was holding it hostage. And what I am talking about is, let me make sure I get this right because I want to, I don't know what, I'm going to sit it right there. Yeah, you can see me really, really well with the phone there. Okay. I want to sit it there and go on with this webcast. These technical difficulties today or something else, aren't they? Okay, let me see. Okay, got it. Got it. Good. Okay, now, so I'm talking about when is it time to stop giving advice? And then I was talking about okay, it's starting back up now with no problem. Let me see.
Let me go to my site here since I have it on the phone here and the phone is doing just fine. I am going to continue and pull up my uh, my information here on the other. Let me see if I can find it again. I might not be able to find it again, but when to stop giving advice. And like I said, I hope you're feeling well. I am feeling good. I'm not being discouraged because I know things happen. So when is the time to stop giving advice? I'm just going to pull that right on back up. When is it time to stop? And I was talking about how we can give advice to people. We can give advice to people, and then it seems like it just goes in one ear and out the other. So I'm not going back to that site. But anyway, and then sometimes there are so many people who give unsolicited advice. There are people who give unsolicited advice. I mean, it just seems like they're always in somebody else's beeswax, as they say. You know, we used to say when we were children, get out of my beeswax. They in my beeswax. So anyway, there's a time, unsolicited advice. You have to be very cautious about giving that too. But some people are so free and so happy to give unsolicited advice. And it really, really, okay, now I'm looking at let me get back to the phone here. Okay, all right. So unsolicited advice. So I am going to get back to those pages here, but I'm not going to go back to that page uh, that I was on because I don't want it to seize up again. So we were talking about it. So here's one that I was talking about how I mentioned it, how to guide people without giving advice, because it's very important that we're very careful about giving advice, because so many times we can give some unsolicited advice and we can get in a lot of trouble, and then sometimes get other people in trouble too with the advice that people give. So, like I said, we have to be careful. Be very, very, very careful when you're giving advice. And everybody is not able to or equipped to give advice, because many times, in order to give advice, we have to have our house in order too. Mm. And so, how to guide people without giving advice? We're inclined to give advice to others, but there is a better alternative, and this is by Warren Berger. Warren Berger. You see my reunion shirt I have on here. Warren Berger. How to guide people without giving advice. We're inclined to give advice to others, but there's a better alternative. Thank you so much for being with me. And I have this problems. Giving advice to others gives us a sense of control and status, which may make us feel good, but usually isn't all that helpful to the other person. So instead of giving advice, we can guide people to find their own answers through a combination of listening and asking questions. So, asking what is the real challenge here for you, followed by and what else, helps people focus on the most important problem they are trying to solve. And I'm going to do a check here. I'm going to do a Facebook check so I can make sure that I'm on here. Facebook. Oh, okay. When I look up, I'm looking up. Okay, there I go. All right, I'm back now. Just to make sure, because the phone is down, so that's why I'm looking up at the computer. So let's go right ahead and do this. How to guide people without giving advice. So when you think about it, our inclination to advise others doesn't make sense. We usually don't know enough about a particular person's situation or problem to be able to give them the best advice. And often our own biases based on what we happen to believe or what we may have worked for our particular or what may have worked for our particular situation in the past inform the advice we give to others. The advice we give to others. So let me make sure here that my mic is up. Yes, it is. Okay, so and often our own bias is based on what we happen to believe or what we may what may have worked for us at a particular time or situation in the past inform the advice we give to others. So the renowned executive coach and author Michael Bungay Stanier was written about this, or he has written about this in a recent book called The Advice Trap. Now, Michael believes our desire to give advice to others is about certainty and control. And so that study said that when people give advice, they feel important. They feel important when they give advice. So you're in control of the conversation. You're the one with the answer. So it can make you feel pretty good about yourself. So Michael notes that people in leadership positions, managers on the job, but also the heads of households too, may feel obliged to tell people what to do, to offer up a solution for every problem. But it seems to also affect close personal relationships. So when we know someone very well, for example, a spouse or a best friend, it's easy to fall into the habit of dispensing advice to them, even when they haven't asked for it. And we've all been guilty of that, haven't we? And it isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes people actually need advice, and sometimes, though probably not as often as you think, you may be in a good position to offer it. And the writer said, I don't say never give advice. Michael told me in a recent conversation, he said, just slow down the rush to advise people because the truth is your advice often isn't as good as you may think it is. So, in other words, that advice might make sense for you, but not necessarily for others. That advice might make sense for you, but not necessarily for each other. See, sometimes we don't think about that because many times we think, oh, I'm doing this and I'm saying this, and this is the thing to do, and this is the thing to say, but it's not always the thing to do and say. Not always the thing to do and say. So, next, we'll get on to the next one here. Now, where is it? Let me see. Wow, it is trying to disappear on me. Trying to disappear. Okay. Now, giving misguided advice to someone you know can end up damaging the relationship, though more often your advice is likely to be simply ignored. And remember at the beginning, or if you caught me at the beginning, of which I'm going to have to go back and I'm going to have to edit this and I'm going to have to cut out probably the front part of it and then just edit it and repost it. So I was talking about how I'd given advice. People call you, they come to you for advice, and this has happened to me before. And I've done what I felt like the Lord would have me to do by telling them, helping them, and listening to them. And then next thing you know, when you hear from them again, well, I just went ahead and did this, and I just went ahead and did that. Everything you had said to them is gone out the window. Okay? So that's why many of us tend to do with advice. That is why many of us tend to do with advice we're given, though it doesn't stop us from turning around and giving this unwanted gift to others. So, though more often your advice is likely to be simply ignored. So, the advice alternative, help them find their own answers. What's the alternative? Rather than handing people what you think is the answer, it's preferable to help them find their own answers if possible. And one way to do that is through a combination of listening and asking questions that gently probe and guide. And you see that word gently, probe and guide, a way of asking words that gently probe and guide. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for being with me. And if you, I've had to go off twice and then come back in. So I will I'm planning to go and edit parts out of this that are not good, and then just uh, put the good part on here. And what I mean, if you were with me earlier, my computer was held hostage for some reason. It was saying, you know, it was held anyway. It was held hostage, so I had to start again. So here I am, and thank you so much for your patience and for being with me today. So we're talking about giving advice. When is the time to stop giving advice? And then another thing I want to talk about today is um, how to politely tell someone to mind their own business. So now we're talking about giving advice. And so we need to also know how to keep people out of our business, or we stay out of other people's business too, giving unsolicited advice and asking questions that we don't need to ask if they don't want us in their business. And then sometimes, have you ever had someone to come to you and they're talking and talking, telling you the business and everything, and then later on they want you out of their business, you have these well, how you coming along and everything, and they give you the cold shoulder and all that. That's happened also. So we have to just be prepared and be wise. And what's that scripture say? Wise as serpents and harmless as doves. So so what's the alternative? Rather than handing people what you think is the answer, it's preferable to help them find their own answers if possible. And one way to do that is through a combination of listening and asking questions that gently probe and guide. So, the model for this type of interaction is used by many life coaches, by many consultants, and especially therapists. A good therapist doesn't tell you what to do. She leads you on a path to figuring it out for yourself. And that's what I try to do. I try to do justice, lead the person on a path to figure it out for themselves. Because, like I said, giving advice is a tedious thing. It's a very, very, very important thing. And you have to be very wise in dealing with people and their feelings and their emotions. So, if you can help someone to think about a problem more clearly and gently guide them in the direction of possible solutions, you're leaving room for that person to arrive at their own insights and make their own decisions, so that they have more ownership of potential solutions. They have more ownership. I'm going to turn my light on here. See if that's helping out quite a lot. At first, taking this approach may feel as satisfying as dispensing advice. Bungay Stanier notes, when you ask questions, you're stepping into ambiguity and lower status. You may be empowering the other person, But in doing that, you're disempowering yourself. So he said, I think because you're helping people, you do win in a long term, but it might not feel like that in the moment. Because remember, those studies said that people who give advice tend to feel more powerful and more in control. So there's so much to consider when you're giving advice. So, how can we use questions to guide someone toward figuring out their own solutions? So, Michael advises that you start by helping them to focus on and clarify the real problem they need to address. Often people have not quite figured out what that is, so they end up trying to solve other problems instead. So this is a thing where you have to stay focused. And one thing about a good listener, a good therapist, a good counselor, good whoever, you have to stay focused on the person. Let the person know that you are with them, that you are listening, and that you are in the zone that you need to be with them at the time. So, a key question and a powerful follow up. Here is the key question Michael asks people he's trying to help. What is the real challenge here for you? So, notice the emphasis on the words real and you. This puts a focus on the most important problem and on the person trying to solve it. You and real, all right? So he says that, Michael says that because this question is so important, he tries to get the other person to really think about it and dig deep. So to do this, he uses powerful follow up questions or in one powerful follow-up question, sometimes in repetition. So after the person has shared what they believe to be the real problem, Michael asks, and what else? If they come up with another problem, he may again ask, and what else? So that sounds pretty wise to me, huh? So Michael calls, and what else, the all question. And indeed, that three-word question is pretty awesome in terms of its surprising power. So, by pushing people to go beyond top of mind answers, this question elicits more and usually better ideas and insights. So, it encourages the process of thinking out loud about a challenging subject. And by continually asking this question, the questioner can remain in a more supportive role. So, as Bungay Stanier notes, the all question can help keep the advice monster at bay. For real. Some people just love to give advice. But he offers two caveats, excuse me, Lord, caveats about the question. It must be asked with genuine interest. If it is asked as nothing more than a rote question, then it becomes irritating. As Bungay Stanier adds, that it generally is most effective when asked three times in succession, but no more than that, no more than three times. And what else? And what else? No more than three times. So by the third round, consider rewording the question slightly to, is there anything else? Which invites closure. This is nice. So once someone has thought more clearly about the problem they're trying to solve, you can begin to guide them toward possible actions they could take. So this is, instead of giving advice, try to guide the person to a solution, guide them to come up with their own solution. All right. So when people are dealing with a challenge, they may actually already have their own ideas about possible courses of action, but they might need help organizing those thoughts into a coherent strategy. Next, help them focus but avoid judging. And we talk so much about not judging, advising, don't judge, don't judge, don't judge, okay? Help them focus, but avoid judging. So, how to guide people without giving advice, all right? So, Hal Mayer, executive pastor and leadership trainer at Grace Family Church in Tampa, shares a great example of how, by using only questions with not a word of advice, it's possible to help someone figure out what to do. Mayor was coaching a woman who was trying to attract more volunteers to help her in her parish. He started by asking her to set her goals, attract 10 new volunteers. He next asked, "What have you tried?" And she mentioned past efforts that had not worked. He then asked this question: "If you could try anything and money was no object, what would you do to find new volunteers?" So the woman first came up with the idea of offering people $100 to volunteer. Mayor had made note of that and asked, "And what else?" With each subsequent idea she shared, he followed up by asking for another idea and then another. When she ran out of ideas, he showed her the list of 5 ideas she came up with and asked, "Which one of these most interests you? Which one would you like to discuss further?" She chose an idea about setting up a lemonade stand at which children could hand out applications to volunteer. Came up with her own answers and solutions or idea. So maybe, or Mayor then asked several practical questions about that idea. How would you set it up? What would you need to get started? What problems might get in the way of this idea? What are the first steps you can take right away? By the time he was finished with the conversation, which took less than 20 minutes, the woman had a plan of action and was ready to begin in a few days. Oh my goodness. So, and he did all this without giving advice. All right. So, as Mayor points out, he did not pass judgment on any of her ideas or try to tell her how to proceed. All I did, he says, was ask her questions to help her focus. So you'll notice one of the important things Mayor did in the midway point of that conversation was to solicit multiple ideas using the AWE question. The favorite idea about the lemonade stand wasn't the first or even the second idea mentioned by the woman. It had to be drawn out with follow up questions. So, when you're asking someone to talk about a challenge they're facing and how it might be addressed, the initial responses may be superficial or impractical, but generally, people will dig for deeper thoughts and better ideas if you use that powerful question. Okay? All right. What is the takeaway? Skip the advice. Ask these 7 questions, and they're coming up, okay, to help someone figure it out for themselves. Number one, what is the real challenge here for you? And so, this we're talking about not giving advice, how to guide people without giving advice. Okay. Number one, what is the real challenge here for you? Number two, what have you tried already? Number three, if you could try anything to solve this, what would you try? Number four, and what else? So repeat 2 or 3 times as needed to surface additional questions. So, number five, which of these options interests you most? Number six, what might stand in the way of this idea and what could be done about it? Number seven, what is one step you could take to begin acting on this right now? And that sounds so good, doesn't it? And so, this is Psychology Today. Psychology Today. And this is I want to give you the correct topic: how to guide people without giving advice. How to guide people without giving advice. Thank you so much for being with me. I appreciate you for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Thank you. In spite of the difficulty I had in the beginning, you're right here with me, and I appreciate it. So, I want to get back here, and I said I was going to talk about. I have 10 minutes. We talked about people giving unsolicited advice, and so sometimes we probably been guilty of that too. And then, so how to help someone without giving advice, how to guide them into getting their own solution, their own solution. So now I want to say, how do you politely tell people to get out of your business? All right. So let me see where that is. How to politely tell someone. All right. Let me go into this. Because we've all had to do some of these things sometimes, and we don't want to be rude, even though people are rude getting into our business. Sometimes if we've been in other folks' business, we've been rude too at times, probably. But then sometimes it's people interpret it as being in their business and being busy. But sometimes we have to uh, find out what's going on with people, especially if it's our family, someone close to us. If something's unusual is going on, we need to find out. And how we're going to do that, we're going to ask questions. But then sometimes people are all in folks' business, asking this and doing this and that and the other. And it's just terrible sometimes. So here are 19 polite ways to say none of your business. So, and this is written by Susan. And this site is Sassy Sisters Stuff. And so Susan, Sassy Sister Stuff, she said, my name is Susan. I've lived in Southern Maryland, just outside of Washington, D.C. my whole life. She said, I recently retired from a long career in education and wanted an outlet where I could continue to create meaningful connections with others while on my own next journey. And so she says, thus Sassy Sister Stuff was born, an online community where we share, support, and inspire each other on our journeys. So she said, you'll find articles about aging, personal growth, wellness, mindset, adventure, happiness, and other topics that will help us all live our best lives of passion, purpose, and positivity. And she said, wishing you sunshine and smiles today and every day. And she invites us to read on. So I'm going back up here. So this is by Susan, the author, and this is sassysisterstuff.com. 19 polite ways to say none of your business. If you're like me, she says, you probably wish you knew some polite ways to say none of your business or mind your own business when a nosy friend asks about a private matter, or when someone from work inquires about the conversation you just had behind closed doors with your boss. Sometimes you just don't feel like talking about something. It may be a private matter or a sensitive issue or even someone else's issue. Truth be told, she says, you might not feel comfortable talking about an issue, or you might even think it's not your place to talk about the matter. Either way, when someone directly asks you about the sensitivity situation or the sensitive situation, you usually feel like you need to have a response. But proper etiquette tells us that we should be polite, right? It tells us that. And we should do it the best way we can. A soft answer turns away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. That's the scripture. Fortunately, there are ways to say none of your business or mind your own business without being rude. It helps to be prepared and practice some responses ahead of time, if possible. So you have to be ready. What does it say? Uh, Let us stay ready, so you won't have to get ready or something like that. I'm not good on these, all that. So let's look at some simple responses you could say instead of mind your own business. What does none of your business mean? There are two reasons or two responses people generally want to use when confronted with questions about a private matter. Number one is mind your own business. Number two is none of your business. And sometimes, there's one say, get yourself some business, all right? So people might even be inclined to simply say the acronym MYOB. And it talks about Wikipedia having an entire page of these phrases. Mind your own business is a common English saying which asks for respect of others' privacy. It strongly suggests that a person should stop interfering in what does not affect themselves. Contextually, it is often used in an argument or dispute as a remark to refute, reject, disregard, or discourage others' concerns or comments. So when using these phrases, you are somewhat rudely telling the person not to ask about something that does not concern them. Oftentimes, it comes with an annoyed tone of voice and may offend the person asking the questions. And something, hey, you might be offended by them asking. And then they have the audacity to be offended, but some people don't mean any harm. They just don't know how to be. Okay? So why do people ask personal questions? People have a wide degree of opinions about what constitutes personal questions or personal matters. So plus some people don't have the life experience to know that they are asking inappropriate questions. Try to be patient in these situations because it's usually not worth getting upset about. That the person asking the questions could become truly embarrassed if they don't realize it's a sensitive matter or they won't care anyway. There's two, they won't, might not care, or they don't know it's truly sensitive. So try to be patient with them. So there are also potential cultural differences that could cause barriers in communication about private matters, so you can offer a polite response and move on. 3 minutes. Fortunately, there are many different ways to say mind your own business or it's none of your business in a polite and proper manner. Polite ways to say none of your business. When someone asks about a private matter, you can choose a good way to respond rather than risk being rude or starting an argument. Plus, remember, it's absolutely not necessary to elaborate on your answers. Make it simple and move on. We are sometimes inclined to keep talking, but just don't. It's not necessary. Just don't keep talking. It's just not necessary. So, on a positive note, you might even politely teach someone a lesson about not asking personal questions in the future. So, number one, don't worry about it. I've got this. Number two, I'd prefer not talking about it. Number three, I'd rather not go into details if you don't mind. Number four, thanks for asking, but I'm not ready to talk about that yet. Now, what we're talking about is 19 ways to politely say, mind your own business, all right, or it's none of your business. Number five, that's not my story to tell. Number six, thanks for your concern, but it's personal. Number seven, I'm still sorting it out. Let's talk later. Number eight, I don't want to think about it right now. Let's talk about you. Number nine, I need some time to think through this on my own. Number 10, it's not my place to say anything about it. 11, I'm a private person and I'm not comfortable sharing. 12, that's rather private information that I prefer not to discuss. 13, these are uncomfortable questions, so let's not discuss this right now. 14, their issue, THEIR, issue is none of my business, so I prefer not to discuss it. 15, I appreciate your interest, but I prefer to handle it in my own way. 16, give me some time to work things out, and I'll fill you in as soon as I can. 17, I have no comment right now. 18, I'm still trying to figure things out, but if I think I can use your help, I'll let you know. 19, it's really not your concern, but I appreciate your inquiry. So this is somewhat something else popped up here. So I'm going to have to check on this, make sure that my what is it? That spam software is working like it should. So this is somewhat more confrontational. So I would only use this in situations where I'm trying to make a point. So here's one. Okay. So there's no one best answer to questions about private matters, but you do not need to discuss something that makes you uncomfortable. See, we have that right. We don't have to discuss something that makes us uncomfortable. I'm going to sign off here. Give your full attention to the person asking questions and use a friendly tone voice when you respond with a polite phrase. Just know that your private life is yours. Thank you so much for being with me today. I really appreciate it. I am not going to hold you over because I had technical difficulties. Thank you so much. And I will probably, if I need to edit this, I probably uh, will edit this and then repost it. All right. I love you so much. Enjoy the remainder of your day. I'm looking up because my phone is down. So when you see me looking up, I'm looking at the computer. Okay. All right. Enjoy your day.